report in the Times of Israel was that in exchange for not carrying out a large strike on Iran, the U.S. has agreed to Israel's plan for rooting out more Hamas terrorists in Rafah. Now, I'm not so sure that Joe Biden is aware of this report or is aware of this agreement or is aware of Rafah, because it didn't seem like he was yesterday when he addressed the topic.
And I made it clear to Israelis, don't move on Haifa.
Haifa?
It's just not, I mean, anyway, I just, look what we did recently when Israel was attacked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Haifa, that's in Israel.
Thank goodness for, speaking of Israel, along with help from the United States and Jordan and apparently Saudi Arabia, being able to defend themselves from that attack was no thanks to Joe Biden. The Wall Street Journal reminds us, dutifully, that Joe Biden scoffed at missile defense systems when they were proposed by one President Ronald Reagan back in the 80s. In fact, Joe Biden said, that it was derisively termed Star Wars by Ted Kennedy, actually. Joe Biden in a National Press Club speech, Star Wars represents a fundamental assault on the concepts, alliances, and arms control agreements that have buttressed American security for several decades, and the president's continued adherence to it constitutes one of the most reckless and irresponsible acts in the history of modern statecraft. They typically measure Joe Biden, who is just engaged in the same sort of hyperbole he's engaged in now, although less cognizant of it, not knowing anything about the underlying issue, anything about what's being said, because he is a cipher for the company. And the company is the Democrat Party. And wherever the Democrat Party is where Joe Biden is, where you will find Joe Biden. Wherever the center of gravity is, that's where you'll find him. He is a company man who recites what the company provides him to recite. Nothing more than that. As the Journal editorial board observed, the hero of last weekend was Israel's missile defense systems. The world watched in real time Saturday night as Reagan's commitment to shooting down missiles protected Israel's population from the more than 300 drones and ballistic and cruise missiles fired by Iran and its proxies at cities across Israel. And also Israel's foresight in recognizing missile defense systems sounds like a good idea, given the antagonism of some of our neighbors and the terrorist groups they sponsor. By the way, just as a quick aside, in addition to Joe the Clueless representing being present and accounted for yesterday, so was Joe the Fabulist. I mean, this is really a tortured way to try to strike at Trump with an old accusation, by the way. But old Joe had another World War II story about his family.
Back when D-Day occurred, and on Sunday, the next day, my mother's 4 brothers all went down to the recruiting station and joined the military. Every one of them volunteered. And my uncle, they called him Ambrose, Brosey, they called him Bozy. My Uncle Bozy was a hell of an athlete, they tell me, when he was a kid. And he became an Army Air Corps before the Air Force came along. He flew those single-engine planes as reconnaissance over war zones. He got shot down in New Guinea, and they never found the body because there were a lot of cannibals for real in that part of New Guinea. And then my son volunteered to go to Iraq for a year, and he came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. And they gave, like many of you, risked your lives, and people who gave their lives to the country. They're heroes. But one of the things that as I was doing that today, I was reminded of what my opponent said in Paris not too long ago. They asked him to go visit American grave sites. He said no, he wouldn't do it because they were all suckers and losers. I'm not making that up. Staff who was listening acknowledged it today. Suckers and losers. That man doesn't deserve to have been the commander-in-chief for my son.
Yeah,
What
that
a
was
stretch. Come
that
on.
was a long way, a long walk off that shore pier. Anyway,
Well, later,
that
by the way, he said it was his grandpa, and not like he doesn't even know who Bozy is, Uncle Bozy, and then it was Grandpa Bozy. He told the story so many times he can't keep his lies straight.
yeah, I think
Was cannibalized.
I think Corn Pop was on that flight too, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Anyway, that the accusation in the direction of Trump was one made by the Washington Post back when Trump was president, and it was disputed by no less a Trump critic than his former ambassador to the UN, John Bolton, who said, I was there for the conversation in question where this allegedly occurred, and I didn't hear it. But anyway, we're bringing all things back and inventing new and exciting stories because this is what Joe Biden is left to do, is able to do. By the way, just on the story, this is nothing to denigrate the service of Uncle Bozy, but I mean the whole story is the way they told the story, and he may have done single-engine reconnaissance planes, but it wasn't on that day. He was a passenger in a twin-engine plane that went down in the water, and both he and another serviceman were lost at sea.
Not eaten alive.
There was one of the three that were on that flight survived, was rescued by barge, and so on and so forth. But yeah, they landed in the. It's just.
I know, and the people standing behind him while he's talking about Uncle Bozy being eaten alive by cannibals. I mean, they're like, wait, what's going? They look shocked. Like, what is he talking about?
Well,
this is supposed to be a meeting about the economy.
Yeah, no,
What?
but I know,
Grandpa's getting eaten alive in the jungle.
As much of a gaffe machine and a wanderer as he is on the stump. We know from Ali Mayorkas and so many other Biden sycophants. Oh, but in private meetings, he is exacting. He is this. He is that.
Fire,
sure. Well, one of those private meetings, somebody explained to him the difference between Haifa and Rafah. Anyway, we're pleased to be joined by Yinam Cohen, who is the Consul General of Israel to the Midwest. Consul General Cohen, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So, what about that report that the U.S. In the Times of Israel that I mentioned at the outset? The U.S. agreed to essentially sign on to an incursion into Rafah against Hamas in exchange for, more or less, to use Biden's parlance, reportedly, taking the win with respect to Iran.
Course, engage in very intimate and strategic conversations with all our allies. The United States is the most important one, but also with our regional allies in the Middle East, because we want to find the right way to deal with the two most important dangers in our region right now. And there is Iran, the well said, launched more than 300 projectiles on Saturday night towards Israel, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. Iran that has also nuclear capabilities and aspires to be a nuclear country. On the other hand, we have an Iranian proxy, Hamas, a terrorist organization in the Gaza Strip, who's still holding more than 130 Israeli hostages and is engaged in terrorist organizations against our country. That's perpetrated the October 7th massacre, more than 1,200 Israelis. To deal with these two major challenges, threats, national security, and we do it with, in partnership and with consultations with our partners, even though, at the end of the day, it is our ultimate responsibility and obligation to take the decisions about what's the best way to defend our citizens.
I mean, I understand what your limitations are, but I mean, what can you tell us about the posture towards continuing to prosecute the campaign against Hamas, particularly since they have rejected any sort of ceasefire that would involve any immediate release of any hostages that are alive still, and also towards Iran, and whether or not now, I mean, despite Iran's reported taunting, if now isn't a good time to refocus on finishing the mission against Hamas. What additional color can you provide in terms of our better understanding that?
So in terms of Hamas, definitely the major challenge that remained in the Gaza Strip is the city of Rafah, where four Hamas battalions are still concentrated with significant military terrorist power. We've been engaged in discussions with the Americans, with the Europeans, and with our Arab neighbors about operation in Rafah. And I would say the following: what we're discussing is basically how and not the if, when and not the if, because it is very clear that we need to operate there. We need to really eliminate of the terrorist infrastructure of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and Rafah is still a major challenge. And we also have to eliminate all the tunnels that cross the border between Rafah and Egypt, because these tunnels are used to smuggle weapons, ammunition, and the activists. So this is something that we have to take care of, and I believe that will happen. When, I cannot share any further details because I don't have them, but I do know that it should happen. It happen. Well, Iran is a major. Sorry.
No, go ahead on Iran.
Iran is a major challenge, and I want to say one thing. Iran has been perceived as a threat to Israel. Then, because it is also because of its activities against some of the Arab neighbors in our region, everybody understands that Iran is a major threat not only to Israel but to year, they became the most partners of the Russians' aggressions against the Ukraine. What I'm trying to say is that Iran really became a global problem. That a global problem should be addressed globally. Only Israel's mission, of course, we will do whatever necessary. That all our partners, all our allies, that it's not only about the military reaction. One of the major things to contain Iran and to send a very strong message is, for example, by sanctions. Equivalent sanctions to send a very strong message to the Ayatollahs in Tehran that their activity against Israel in the region and against American interests be tolerated.
Well, so then how do you react to like what John Kirby and others have said, that we've been very tough on Iran, we've imposed sanctions on Iran, and then the response is, well, what about I don't know, it's not really important to argue about the number of billions of dollars that have been sent from the Obama administration and now the Biden administration, formally sent to Iran or provided to the Iranians through unfreezing of frozen assets. And Kirby's response to that, because I mean that number, and if you include the oil profits, I mean it's in the hundreds of billions. But that doesn't matter. The point is, Kirby is saying, well, that's we're monitoring these unfrozen assets, and we're being tough on Iran. But I mean, what's your perspective on that? I don't know how you square that circle by providing resources and conceding, as Blinken did, that Iran uses its resources to foment terrorist activities and underwrite them.
The unprecedented Iranian attack on Israel on Saturday, there is a much deeper understanding, both in the United States but also elsewhere, in Europe and in Asia, for example, that more could be done against Iran. More could be done against Iran in terms of sanctions, in terms of freezing their assets, in terms of personal implications to the leadership of Iran. The American Congress has been engaged in that in the past days. We've seen some important legislation, and there is more on the table. The Union is getting ready to take action. Also, some Asian countries are getting ready to take action. So we might have not waited up until now. It's better later than never. So I'm very happy that these are being taken right now.
But I mean, but you would concede it was. I mean, it's got to be Israel's position. I know it was. I know it was Bibi's, that the provision of all of those monies that I referenced to Iran in terms of direct cash as well as unfreezing of assets, trading money for hostages, that was a policy that encouraged Iran to be more aggressive. That was not a policy that that brought Iran into the fold of peace in the Middle East in any way.
Contrary, they've been using and they're to send the ammunition to send a very missiles to their proxies, to their terrorist organization, to their network of terrorist organizations all across the Middle East, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to the Houthis in Yemen to the Shiite militias in Syria and Iraq, to the Islamic Jihad in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Of course, they did that. They also did that to encourage, for example, the Houthis in Yemen to threaten international commerce on the Red Sea. Indications of Iran being strong and Iran being with resources are very dangerous. Again, not only to Israel, not only to the Middle East, the whole world. Very happy that there's an understanding now that a lot more should be done and could be done against Iran.
Going back to Rafah, so it's interesting you talked about Hamas having battalions and infrastructure. Because we had this conversation with an academic from Clemson University yesterday, and it's an argument that's been made by many others too, that look, Israel, like America couldn't kill its way out of dealing with radical Islamic terrorists. Neither can Israel bomb its way out of Hamas. You can't eliminate Hamas because you'll just enlist more people into Hamas because they've lost a family member in the war and so on and so forth. You know the argument. All you do is radicalize more by eliminating radicals. But what you're saying is, and I'm not saying that I stipulate to that because I don't, but you're saying there is actually discernible infrastructure here that whether there are more Hamas or less Hamas, there's infrastructure that needs to be dismantled so Hamas doesn't have capacity it otherwise would, no matter what the official number of Hamas individuals affiliating with Hamas turns out to be.
Absolutely, because talk about very specific numbers. October 7th, Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, operates in a military-like hierarchy, had more than 40,000 combatants, terrorists affiliated with them. We know that more than 12,000 of them are not anymore. They had 24 battalions all across the Gaza Strip. We know that 18 of them are not operative anymore because they have been eliminated by Israel. We know that they had more than 700 kilometers, that's more than 400 miles of underground terrorist infrastructure. By the way, bigger than the subway of New York, the infrastructure in New York. And we've been eliminating a major part of these tunnels. So we have very concrete goals and we have very concrete achievements, and we know what we want to achieve. But I totally agree with you that Hamas is more than just terrorist infrastructure. Hamas is also an ideology, a very radical, hateful ideology that has been educating the children of Gaza for 20 years now, since Israel left in 2005, to hate Jews, and ultimate goal in life is to kill as many Jews as they can. Sure about the radicalization because of this military operation. They have been radicalized for 20 years. And I think that the second stage after the military operation should really be a long process of uprooting the ideology, Gaza Strip, the hateful, murderous ideology of Hamas. And I'm always thinking of the Americans because this is exactly what you did in Nazi Germany after World War II, right? A very long process of denazification, uprooting the Nazi ideology of the brains and minds of German people. And as much as the American unification process was successful, I believe that we can do the same in the Gaza Strip, to believe in what we do.
He is Yinam Cohen. He is the Consul General of Israel to the Midwest. Consul General Cohen, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, this is Randy Donnelly from Donnelly Auctions in Union, Illinois, with my current want list for upcoming auctions. Guns and military items are always at the top of my list, but I have buyers for vintage automobiles and motorcycles, old gas pumps and automotive signs. Do you have pinball machines and coin-operated games like slot machines, jukeboxes? How about Coke machines and soda machines? Also, neon signs, antique phonographs and music boxes, old toys, especially science fiction and Star Wars, cowboy and Native American collections like barbershop, ice cream parlor, and saloon items. We'll take one item or an entire collection. We sell it all. Call me before you sell your items outright because you could be leaving a fortune on the table. And you won't know until you call me at 815-923-7000 or send me an email at donnellyauctions.com. My job is to get you top dollar for your collections, so call me at 815